So today's topic is a little, I think personally, a little bit heavy because we're going to talk a little bit about collective trauma. And there's a lot of collective trauma going on right now, especially for women and especially for women of color. And so as I was preparing this, I noticed in my own system like a little bit of disrest and a little bit of anxiety. And I started reading a new book, actually, and I have it in the handouts. Healing Collective Trauma is the book, and he goes into some pretty graphic details of American history and a lot of research on World War II and the Nazi concentration camps. So as we start to get into this stuff, it can feel a little bit, just kind of notice what happens in your body. Like, notice if you have a tendency to disassociate, notice you have a tendency to get anxious, notice if it feels okay, because maybe you've done a lot of work around this. Um, I personally don't have direct lines from the concentration camps. My sister was married to a man from Israel whose whole family, except for the father and the mother, obviously his mother and father, but like all of his grandparents died. There was like only one line left, and he has no aunts and uncles. Like, it's his dad and his grandparents because everyone else died. And this is carried into our system. This is carried into our lives. So I personally don't have that epigenetic line coming through, but it's carried within this collective system. And this is true for so many things. And personally, that's why I think why COVID was so intense and so hard for a lot of us. And like, I remind my husband how lucky we are because, him and I were able to be financially okay during it. I mean, I still worked the whole time. I still had an income, but like a lot of people weren't working. A lot of children weren't getting food anymore because they weren't going to school. A lot of abuse was happening in the homes. And so not only does it bring up that, but it also brought up, I think, a lot of previous collective trauma that hadn't been addressed. And so suddenly now we're in another state of a collective trauma or collective disaster. And all of a sudden, this previous trauma that we hadn't addressed gets brought up to the surface. And I think that's part of the reason why it feels so a little crazy right now, and why I also think there was like this huge explosion with Black Lives Matter, because we were all being forced into this trauma. And then there was like this there was an explosion. And it like, it needs to happen. Like, we need to sometimes have these large events in order to kind of shake our nervous system and wake us up. But this is not an easy topic. And usually most of us are so unaware that this is even running in the undercurrent of our nervous system. And like, also, again, do we have the energy or the capacity or the time? Like, if we're dealing with our own stuff, how can we possibly be processing what happened in the Nazi concentration camps years ago, So it's like, take the bits and pieces, just notice your body, take the bits and pieces, like what you're ready for. You can't force this work on yourself. It's like, it's what you're ready for, which I noticed actually. Maybe I'll share that later. So we talked about ancestral trauma last week and epigenetics. This is similar, like collective trauma also pulls in some epigenetics, but we're looking at more, when I collective trauma, I'm putting us more into groups, like what's happening at the group level for a group of people that might not have blood relation. Oh, and actually, before I share, we didn't quite get into ancestral trauma, but then we did on Friday with our call, and I'll share the recording, Diana. So these guys
I was
got a
so
little
laughing about the Viking. I'm like, of course, like this is like so good.
yeah. So we got into it a little ahead of ourselves, but it's like our system, our nervous system of us, knew that this is what was coming. So it was like, sure, we can get into ancestral healing on Friday. Why not? And I tried to do it in a way, because you guys don't do like super muscle testing, Crystal. You jumped into your intuitive self, which I loved. I tried to do it in a way that like would guide you guys there without the muscle testing, without too much of the woo, but some of the woo. So anyway, so we're going to talk a little bit about ancestral trauma first, and then get into collective trauma. If I can share.
And I just have to say one funny thing, because it was so awesome on Friday. We got done, we finished the call. I took a minute, walked my dog, gave him a 15-minute walk. I needed it too. Went back downstairs to finish my work day. And I was like, I need to change my work screensaver background. And I have this incredible Viking ship now with this beautiful Norwegian backdrop. And it's almost like I heard someone say, I'm with you and we've got this. And I was like, oh. So that's pretty cool.
I love that stuff. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, thank you. That's awesome. All right, now I'll share the screen. So I just loved this woman that I found in Canva. Gotta love Canva. I just love this picture of her like hanging out in her underwear, and she's like this beautiful Indian woman, and she's the complete opposite of how we're told women should be, which is part of that collective trauma as women, right? It's like we're supposed to look a certain way. And I just love her. Like she's absolutely glowing, and she's like, here's my boobs, here's my butt, like here I am and I'm beautiful. And I just look at her and I see, like I saw this photo and I was like, this woman is gorgeous. And I just loved it. So I felt like she deserves a spotlight right now. So again, what do you do when there's no signs and symptoms of childhood trauma or a troubled childhood? Nothing out of the ordinary when you're looking at pregnancy and birth. However, they show signs of early childhood trauma, or they're having difficulties with their neuroception their neuroception, so their sensory system and their ability to feel their bodies are all intact, but it's like something's a little bit off. This is when we get to go into the woo and look at the epigenetics, the ancestral and the past lives, and also the collective trauma. So our health is determined by our relationship to our generational line and family tree. That's a quote from Peter Levine. So if we think about it, a lot of people say 7 generations. We hear a lot about like, oh, we're healing 7 generations forward and 7 generations back. I studied with family constellations, which looks at a systems healing for family. And I will tell you, there were times, and actually this was true for Stephanie, we went beyond 7 generations. Like, I don't know where that number came from. And I just want to highlight that if we have a connection to our ancestors, they're in our family line. It doesn't matter how many generations. And if you think about it, it's like an energy flow coming from and through those lines. And you can almost think about it as when you throw a rock into the pond and it has the ripples, and at each space, like at each ripple, would be the new generation. But what happens when you throw a rock into like a wavy pond, or it gets a kink, it messes up the ripple kinks, and that energy flows through the other rings. And that's essentially what I visualize and what I feel when I feel like something happens back there somewhere, 1 generation, whether it's our parents or 10 generations. It's like something happens that turns on this energetic ripple response through the system. And for whatever reason, I might get it, but my brother wouldn't. Like, we don't know why some people have the DNA or the genetic or the emotional feelings and some people don't. Like, there's no research to that. So the ripples or the kinks change the flow for future generations. And it's often not in our conscious awareness. Like we have no idea, again, because we don't know really what's happening 10 generations ago. We don't know what's happening 7 generations ago. Sometimes we do. Actually, I love it when I get into ancestral healing with some of my clients. And then later they'll be like, oh, I went and confirmed with my mom because genealogy is starting to be a thing. And she'll be like, yeah, and it was totally accurate. Like my family lived here and we were farmers and this happened. And it like confirms everything that happened in our session. And I love it when that happens. So because it's in the unconscious, because we don't know what happened in the past, we don't know what the kink is, it can show up as emotions, it can show up as our reactions, it can show up as behaviors, it can show up as choices, it can show up as conditioning, it can show up in a lot of different ways in patterns. It can show up as patterns and we just don't know why. But it's like, for whatever reason, I act this way, or I have this fear and I don't know what it is. Some are negative and some are life supporting. I might say this on another slide, but there's a lot of focus around ancestral healing and about like all the shit that happened. And it's like, yeah, that's why we need to heal it. We need to witness that. And we're alive because of it. We are who we are. Our generation lived on. We're here on this planet. And there's this, for me, like working more and more with ancestral healing and really tapping in with my ancestors, I've come to the place where it's like, I have so much gratitude for them. And whatever choices they did make meant that they survived. And it meant that they lived. And it meant that because of that, I get to have this human experience and this family line. And that's amazing to me. Like, thanks, guys. And they often have your back once you connect with them in that way of like, whoa, you had a crazy life and had some crazy stories, and I'm here because of it. Like, thanks. So what we're doing is we're bringing the then and there, like the stuff that's happening back there, and we're bringing that to the here and now, into the present moment. So like what causes these kinks? Well, we learned in epigenetics, childhood sexual abuse, war, and torture come through epigenetics like really, really clearly. I find that true for ancestor healing as well. Famine, death, like if someone dies, especially as a young child and like a parent dies, bonding and belonging. So like if parents split up or a parent dies and the child has to bond or belong or make a choice who to be with or what to do or who to bond with, maybe they bond with the grandparent, that can create an energetic kink or ripple. Divided loyalties, like I just think about, again, all the Viking times, and I can only speak to what I watched in Vikings. And my aunt is also a huge genealogy person. So I do know a little bit of my history from Sweden. But it's like divided loyalty. Like during that time when there was a lot of Christian indoctrination in Sweden and Norway and England, there had to be a lot of divided loyalty in order to live. Like a lot of times you did have to denounce your beliefs or denounce who you believe to be king or not king in order to have your family survive. Blind love is really interesting. This is a term from family constellations, doing things and making decisions out of love only. So this is kind of an interesting concept and term, but it's an unconscious awareness where you make decisions in order to honor your ancestors or your parents. So super weird example. See, it's a really good example. My mom left my dad when she was 39. She had been having affairs before and up to that, but finally made the decision to end the marriage and terminate the marriage when she was 39. For whatever weird reason, I just think this is an example of blind love. My sister would probably disagree. My sister, like, kind of fell in love with a coworker, but didn't act on it, but they were really good friends and had like this total crisis from her husband who she dearly loves, and like this guy at work moved away and she had an emotional breakdown essentially, or like not a breakdown, was very distraught and had this moment of like, oh my god, should I leave my husband and take my children with me and move where he's moved? And she knew, she was like, this is so fucked. She's like, this isn't even me. She's like, I'm so in love with my husband, what is happening? My sister was 39. And as this was happening, I was like, I wasn't telling her this. I was holding space for her process and helping her process this. To me, that's an example of blind love. She is carrying out the story of my family line that at 39, someone in the family as a woman leaves the partner, because that's what my mom did. And who knows what happened with my grandma? Maybe something happened at 39, maybe not. Or maybe 5 or 6 generations ago, something happened at 39. So out of love for my mother, total unconscious, she's like, I'll do what you did. I'll honor that within the line. Super weird. Blind love. That's why it's blind. You have no idea that this pattern is happening, but you're acting out the exact same ways. Wild. Parentification. This is where parents turn to the children to meet their own unfulfilled needs. I see this all the time, where the child essentially has to step up and become the parent, either emotionally or physically, like care for the other kids. That creates a kink because it's all about mother-child, father-child relationships, which is what social order is. There's an order to our system. There's an order to the way we work, where it's like father and mother and the children. So if the mother dies and say the oldest daughter then steps up to become the mom, that disrupts the social order and creates a kink in the line. If the parents aren't emotionally mature, per se, if both parents work all the time, parentification happens all the time. And I believe that it happened a lot in the past, and that's why it's happening now, and clearing that out. Social order is the sense of, again, parents, children. It's also the order of the children. So if there's a miscarriage or an abortion, but then other children are born, it's paying attention to the order of the children. And we can talk more about this in these questions, but it's like, or if a child dies, like this is especially back in the day when children died more often. If like the oldest dies and the second oldest is now suddenly expected to be the act as the oldest, that can create a kink in the line, because really the second child is the second child, not the first child. Giving and taking is this relationship of equal giving and taking, giving and receiving. And this can get messed up in all sorts of ways, especially during war, sexual abuse, famine. It's essentially like, what's equal and keeping things equal. So this is where I said it. It's not all bad. It worked. The decisions that they made, whether they were forced or not forced, worked. They lived. So oftentimes in trauma, like we've learned, trauma occurs in a feeling of aloneness, too much, too fast, too soon. The system doesn't get to catch up. So what we're doing for our ancestors is we're witnessing, we're observing, we're feeling it in our bodies. We're seeing it so that it can heal just like any other trauma. We're letting whatever needs to be witnessed and felt to be witnessed and felt so that the energy can move and not be all stuck and bottled in the body. This allows the kink to resolve. And often, many times, the client's like, oh, aha, that's why I act this way. That's why I do this. That's why I make these decisions unconsciously. That's why this is happening. It makes so much sense. Like that's what I hear a lot. Makes so much sense. And then it allows the pattern to shift and to change. And once that kink is moved through the system, it might take a couple weeks, may take a couple months, but it does shift the energy within the system. Any questions on that? It's kind of a lot of information. And like I said, it's a little more woo, but it, like anything come up for you guys, because we're going to jump into collective trauma if there's not any questions. Hi, Paige.
I have a question, Lisa. You were talking about the birth order within a family, and also about when there's like the birth of a child. So, which that happened in my family. With my mom, the baby died shortly after birth due to trauma and sickness during pregnancy, but infection during pregnancy. So my question is, well, it just was a brief touch on it. So I'm just curious about what that does to a family when someone was supposed to be alive and part of the family, and then they're not. I know it's affected my mom super deeply because she's just gets depressed every Christmas because that's when it happened. But just a little more curious about what that does to a family.
Yeah. And so when we're looking at it, we always are looking at the client, right? So it'd be really, well, not always, but it'd be really easy to be like, let's work on my mom and heal my mom's stuff. But I often try to bring it back and sometimes I will just do like some quick emotional clearing for mom if we have permission, even if mom's not there. But oftentimes, rather than being like, yeah, your mom gets depressed at Christmas, how does this affect you? You had a sibling die. How does this affect you? And so bringing it back to client first and foremost. And then again, really looking at how that dynamic shifted for you and your family. Was it the oldest child that died?
No, there were probably 4 other kids first before this one.
And you were born after, right?
No, I rode with the baby in the funeral, like to his funeral.
Okay. I remember you talking about this a little bit
Yeah.
before. So it's more or less like honoring how this affected you and how you grew up. With social order, that it's more like when I see it cause a kink, it's more like, and I'll just share what I'm kind of hearing, Paige, is like, for you, I wouldn't necessarily look at a social order thing. I would look at how your inner child was affected by the death of a sibling and by how your mom responded to that for you as a child. I would look at more like childhood stuff. Social order is like, again, it's usually when the mom dies or if the oldest dies, and the ones below are automatically assumed to then become mother or become the oldest.
That makes sense to me because it's like a patriarchal order, sort of, right? Like
Yeah.
It's like the mentoring and the nurturing aspect is kinked.
Yeah. And when a child is expected to be the mother, she loses her innocence. She doesn't get to be a child anymore. She's forced to grow up. And that can add just like that ripple effect to the line. What I also see, and I don't always see this, like saying, just I'm saying because I've seen this, it doesn't mean this always happens because we're resilient. So sometimes it affects people and sometimes it doesn't, right? So I had a girlfriend who had 3 miscarriages and then her 4th child is alive and here and made it. He's an only child, honoring the fact that actually he's the 4th child. And that's kind of dismissed in our culture. And like, not only is he an only child, so that's showing up differently as well. It's like there's no talk of the 3 previous children. So how can we start to honor when there are? Because there's a part of me too, and part of me is like, would this child even be here if her previous 3 children had been born? Probably not, in a weird way, like, so how can we honor those 3 and honor that he is here and bringing some light and awareness to that?
I also see a lot of when I do spiral, the effects of not being wanted, a pregnancy that was not wanted by the mother
Mhm.
is really strong.
Really, really strong. And like we talked about this in the couple weeks of the prenatal conception stuff, but it's like, I don't know a lot of us that were wanted. Like, if I'm gonna be real. And maybe my family is a bad example, but we have 4 children and 1 was planned. Like, especially before birth control, All right. I'm going to get into collective trauma. So again, this is when a group of people share a traumatic event. This is like natural disasters, famine, women against the patriarchy, sexual orientation, like gay, lesbian, transgender, that amazing movement that's happening right now, and BIPOC, especially women of color, because now they have 2. They're women and they're of color. So it essentially forces group orientation upon us, like women. Women are now suddenly their own group. So Gabor, I never know how to say his name, Mate, he's an amazing physician that started out as a physician and started studying trauma. So he's a great resource, but he says it's impossible to separate personal trauma and collective trauma because the very physiology of our nervous system is created in interaction with the nervous system of other people, which we've discovered through this attachment lens. From the moment we're conceived. We're looking at our mother and mirroring her nervous system onto our nervous system and connecting with her, hopefully, and creating a social nervous system for us. Therefore, it's not even possible to talk about trauma purely on individual terms because we're too connected. We're so connected that we just can't even separate ourselves. And like sometimes with my traumas and stuff I've moved through, I'm like, how much of this is just epigenetics and childhood conditioning and my lens in the world? Like, it's not just me. There's this whole system that I'm looking at. And I really, really found a love for system healing and looking at things as systems going through my family constellation class, because it just reinforced like how system and community based we are. Like what happens to one individual affects the rest of the individuals. So collective trauma essentially forces feelings of being alone, feeling life is threatened, like your literally life is threatened, so you have to do something to survive. Your family is threatened, you're not safe. Feelings of safety are gone. There's often feelings of oppression. You're trying to survive no matter what the cost is to live, like you're fighting to live. And as in all trauma, you have to create an adaptive response to survive. That is trauma in itself. And you think about women of color, anyone of color, the Jews for the Nazis, us as women, like what are we doing to create an adaptive response? So much, so much that stays then within our nervous system and in our subconscious. So there's often an oppressor and a victim thing going on. Like one group is oppressing the other group. And I don't like the word victim here, but I didn't know what else to call it. Because again, I don't feel like Jews were the victims. They didn't choose to be victims. They didn't want to be victims. And I think in our terminology today, we throw around words like oppressor, victim, and we have to realize, like, in a lot of collective trauma, there was no choice. There wasn't the choice. In our small day-to-day decisions in our lives, yes, we can make ourselves the victim, and that makes sense to me. But in a true oppressor victim, there is not a choice to be in that space. And it leads to lack of esteem, hopelessness, lots of depression. I don't have anxiety on here, but anxiety as well. There's doubt, distrust, suspicion, anger, aggression, and violence is a way to act towards the oppressor. So in order to come out of victim, there is often a fight that involves aggression and violence in order for the scales to tip, or in order for there to be an equalization. Oftentimes there's the distorted self-concept. Think about this as women. Not as, I mean, yeah, even so now, it's like women, it's taken me years to be in a space of like, yeah, like, and I'm lucky, I'm so lucky, but like I had such a distorted self-concept of what my body needed to look like in my 20s as a woman. I had such a distorted concept of what my sexuality needed to be like as a woman in my 20s and 30s. I don't have children. Like, so I might be less than. Stephanie, I know you don't have children. Crystal, I think we've talked about you might not. Like, how are we looked at as women because we don't have children? And like, are there any adaptive patterns there? And like, what's the self-concept around that? And then aversion for members of your own group. Oh, I'm not that, when actually you are. So that you're scared to identify with, say, Latino. Like, say you're Latino and you don't look Latino, but you choose not to identify as being Latino out of fear. That's an adaptive response. Who talks about this? I'm in another group and the woman, her mom is Mexican, and her mom looks very white. She looks Mexican, the girl in my group, but her mom looks very white. And the girl in this group talks a lot about growing up. Her mom would never identify as Mexican, would never talk about it. And she talks about how hard that is for her because she has brown skin. Like she's like, yeah, I'm Mexican. I look really Mexican. I'm going to see what's popping up in the chat. Yes, so common. Yeah, thank you for speaking that. When you don't speak Spanish, like, oh, all Mexicans speak Spanish, so you must not be Mexican because you don't. Like, there's such crazy judgments with this. So you start to have an aversion for your own people, your own group. So what do we do? Like, you've just got to do your work. Like, you've really got to start looking at these pieces. Like, where are you showing up as the oppressor? Where are you showing up as the victim? And I guarantee no matter, somewhere in your family line, you probably were an oppressor or you were a victim, like both are true. And like my family line, collective trauma, my family actually converted to Mormonism in Sweden, like way, way early. And that's why we left Sweden, is because we were Mormon and getting oppressed for being Mormon compared to typical Christian. So it's like, that's somewhere in my family line. I don't necessarily identify with it, but like, start looking at how this affects you. How are you being the oppressor? How are your subconscious patterns showing up that we're being racist, or doesn't matter, to someone, to some group in some form? And when other people are being that way, how can you show up to like maybe just highlight some curiosity and awareness. And I went through this during Black Lives Matter because one of the books on here is Me and White Supremacy. That book blew my fucking mind. I read that book and I did the whole journaling thing, and I was like, holy shit, I'm so racist. I had no idea. And I wanted my whole family to read this book, and I wanted my whole family to process what I was processing. And I would try to talk to them about it, and they just weren't there. They weren't there. They weren't in that space. So there's this fine line of like, how can you do your own work and show up as that and be curious and loving, move it through your system, through your body, so that when people are ready, when people are curious, you can start giving them, like offering information, or you start showing up differently that allows people to be curious. Like, oh, Leisha's acting differently. I wonder what that's about. So this first book, Patriarchy Stress Disorder, this is a great one around women and what we're holding as far as the patriarchy, our subconscious and collective trauma as women. Healing Collective Trauma, this is the book I'm reading right now, blowing my mind. It's intense read. It's a really intense read. But it talks a lot about what collective trauma is and what to do with it. And also, if you work with groups, how to help groups through that. Me and White Supremacy is specifically looking at being a white supremacist. It's a workbook, it's a journal, also intense, amazing book. The Racial Healing Handbook, really similar to Me and White Supremacy. This is another beautiful book I've worked through and highly recommend to people. My Grandmother's Hands is amazing because it brings in a somatic perspective to healing. It Didn't Start With You. This is a great book around healing family trauma and realizing that your traumas didn't start with you. They're often through this collective pattern, through this collective piece. So like I said, like this stuff isn't light-hearted. Like it's not a joyful subject. And it hangs out in our nervous system because of we're a culture, we're connected. We're connected. So just notice if anything got brought up for you as you moved through this. Just notice if there's any curiosity around any of those books. Just notice if there's any curiosity now in your body or in your behavior patterns. And just see if anything comes up for you. Just notice if you have any tension in your body after talking about any of that.
What kind of comes up for me, and I know like with the whole kind of like the Asian things like that just came up, like I know particularly my grandparents, my great grandparents, they went through some of the Japanese internment camps during World War II. And so I know like that's not a side that they talked about a lot because I was like third generation, but um, I feel like there's some level of guilt I should feel about it, but I don't, like, because I also like I have like the Latina side and the Asian side that like I didn't really kind of embrace either side. So like particularly growing up in a very mixed cultural area.
Yeah, and I think that's okay. Like, we don't have to look at every collective trauma or everything and assume that something is wrong with us or that like we have to process something. It's just being aware that like that happened to your family, and are there any subconscious patterns happening because of it? And if there's not, like that's okay. And those camps, like I know I'm biased, but I get so frustrated because no one talks about those camps. It's just like shoved under the rug in our history. Yeah. So I'm just gonna feel into this for a second. So my question for you guys, because we have 15 minutes, do you want to do a little activity, the coloring activity, which can kind of bring some really nice insight, can bring some stuff up? Or do you want to, because it is our last Monday, open it up to some questions?
What is the coloring activity, Lisa?
So essentially, I guide you guys through a little mini meditation, and you draw what's coming up for you. Diana's curious about the activity. And also, Alyssa and Paige, if there are future questions, it's like I'm still here. Like you guys both know how to find me on Messenger and can ask me questions anytime. Yeah.
This topic today is just so it's so big and heavy right now in the collective. I mean, we could probably talk for hours just on that, I think that I like that you said that it needs to be witnessed, observed, and felt, and that's a start. And I see that helps people. I just feel like it's so much. It's so much that's just like a drop, but at least that's what we can just be. We can be that going forward. I guess with this lesson, I'm just feeling like the weight of well, for particularly Black Lives Matter movement. I mean, I could take this in all kinds of directions, and for my own line and Asian and all the narratives, but that's the one that's kind of hitting me today, because I didn't know how to handle it.
Yeah, I think a lot of us didn't know how to handle it and still don't. I think maybe for me, when it feels heavy, for me, it's moved from grief to anger at this point, and just recognizing that that's where I am in my process, and how, like, that's just where I am in my process with this. And that's a piece around this work, is understanding that this isn't a wham bam fast work. Like, it's almost been a year from the initial explosion from Black Lives Matter, and stuff's still happening, like the Asians that were killed. That happened, what, 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago? So it's like, this is still happening. It's not, and it's happening to all cultures right now.
Well, it was always I feel like I was kind of so definitive, like do your work, like clear your trauma, putting the responsibility of that on each individual person. Like, if everybody would just do their own work, but what made sense to me when we were going through these slides today is just by having Black skin, you can absorb or feel alone, threatened, oppressed, like you need to survive by waking up in the morning with Black skin. And I understood that from a point of, maybe I live in this kind of a neighborhood, or like Utah's super white, but no, just you're carrying that. So yeah, so that's, and for someone who's like educated and not struggling financially and weight, I don't wake up feeling those things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think because I study trauma and I've studied system theory, looking at systems and groups, it was easier. I'm able to take the perspective and understand like the oppression and the victimization happening from a somatic perspective, like waking up scared, even if you are a Black person living in a good neighborhood. And I think the thing that clicked for me, I say his name wrong, my grandmother's hands book is great. So good. But when we talk about epigenetics and family lines for, say, for African Americans or for Black people, and I'm going to say two things here. That wasn't that long ago. So when we look at our grandparents, my grandfather is still alive. This is their grandparents. This is how close in the genetic line that we're, so I'm totally holding my grandma and my grandpa's stuff so much more than someone like 10 generations ago. That is the case for slavery in America. Like, it didn't happen that long ago. Like, it is current. This is a current thing. And that's why it's so in the somatic bodies. And that's why it's so in the collective trauma. And the other piece is I really sat with this, you guys. Like, I was like, do I want to talk about this? Because I'm white. And I like actually for next round, what I want to do and will do and committed to do is bring in someone of color to have this conversation. I am not in the right place to be holding this conversation, really. Like my plan is to bring someone in of color to have this conversation. So Paige, one thing I would have you sit with today is like, it's heavy, right? You said that. So like, where in your body does it feel heavy? What does it need to move? What do you need to do to move it? And I'm gonna introduce the activity to you guys. And then, because it will take more than 7 minutes. If you guys can take like 5 or 10 minutes after this call, and I can even stay on for a few minutes to finish, like I'll introduce it and then you can do the activity. If you can't, listen to the recording again and do the activity. And I honestly think you could do this for collective trauma or ancestral trauma. It's for ancestral. It's to connect more to the ancestral stuff, but I do think you could find a way. I'll sit with that, actually. I'll do it for ancestral trauma, and then I'll come up with a way to do it for collective trauma, perhaps. And I'll make a video and post it in the portal, just like a separate video. So what I want you to do is have your paper and have your colored pencils or your markers nearby. I wish I had mine. I'm gonna see, I have a stack of papers on my desk. I'll try to find mine, and because I'm not an artist, but if I still have it, I'll take a photo and post it. It's not beautiful. Paige is actually a real artist. Okay, so just take a few minutes, maybe even close your eyes, take a deep breath, tune into your body, drop into your breath. Just notice yourself breathing, maybe bringing awareness to your heart space, allowing your body to notice your heart beating. And then trusting whatever color you're drawn to. Just pick a color and draw you anywhere that you feel called on your piece of paper. It can look like anything. What you just felt in your body. It could be a shape, line, scribble. And just put you anywhere on the paper. Maybe it's more than one color, maybe it's a couple colors. And then closing your eyes again and seeing who or what, if anything, who do you feel connected to in your family line? Who comes up for you? It could be a mom, a dad. It could be a great great grandparent. And just trust your body, trust what's coming up, and put them on the piece of paper, however they look. Maybe there are a couple colors, maybe they're right next to you, maybe they're far away on the paper. And as you look at you and you look at them, now draw whatever the energy or the connection feels like between the two of you. And as you draw that connection and maybe see it on the paper now, just notice what that feels like in your body. And then just notice and trusting yourself. See if there's anything else that needs to go on this paper. Maybe more ancestors are coming through and more connections. Maybe something about that ancestor that you feel connected to that you're like, oh, for some reason I want to draw a house. Just trust. So let your mind go and allow your creative side to come through. And just notice if you're drawn to any other connections of energy, like whatever that looks like, whether it's to them or to the other objects or the other people. And again, you could take as long or as little time as you want on this. And each time you add something to the to your drawing, just notice what it does to your body. And I found mine. Do you guys want to see it? So let's see if I can turn this light off. I'll kind of try to describe it to you. It's kind of hard to see. But this was me, and this was my mom, and this was my dad. And each one of these swirls, this was like my dad's mom and dad, and my grandparents on both sides. And from that, I essentially created one ring or one ripple. So what ended up happening, I don't know if you can see. So anywhere that these lines intersect are an opportunity to create another ripple or another kink. And you can see how many pass through me. And this is just from 4 grandparents and 2 parents. Like the paper is a little chaotic with energy like coming into me and surrounding me. So for me, that just kind of made my body be like, whoa, this is a lot of potential for some patterns or for some thoughts or for some conditioning. And sometimes when I look at it and reflect on it, I'm like, this is overwhelming. And sometimes I'm like, wow, I'm so connected. Like sometimes it's calming. Sometimes I'm like, wow, it's so nice to know I have all this support around me. Just kind of depends on what mood I'm in when I look at it. Paige is an actual artist. Anyone want to share? And if you need to hop off, that's fine too. Yeah. So you can play with this a little bit more. You could also do what I did, which is like put your parents on and then see what you notice in your body. Then energetically draw your connection to your parents. See what you notice in your body. And then allowing yourself to keep adding. And with each thing you add, what does it do for you? Awesome. Any questions on that, you guys? Paige says, I felt very connected to my grandfather's spirit guide. Yeah. Paige, do you mind showing me what your energy connection looked like to him? To your face, you're like,
You built me up as an artist.
well, you are.
So this is me, and I have a heart. My grandfather's my spirit guide, and he has a heart and doesn't have hair. And my grandmother, I felt my grandmother too. So I connected our hearts, but then I felt all these other people. So I just did like orbs or dots like all around and then connected those into my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized like then that connected into the other hearts. So like all the hearts were connected. I know it's hard to see.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that realization actually of like all of our hearts are connected.
You know, I remember you saying this earlier today where just acknowledging their stories and so like I felt that in a very little way just doing this activity. And I imagine like I would appreciate that too if my great grandkids would do that. It would be an invitation to be a part of their life.
Yeah. So with technology, my uncle started recording my grandma talking. My grandma has since passed, but he has the cutest recording, and she was kind of losing it at the end, of her howling at the moon. And like, I never would have thought to record that moment or her voice. And he shared it with all of us after she passed away. And it's so cute just to have that, like her actual voice, and especially in kind of like a funny, cute way of her howling at the moon. So it's sweet. All right. Anyone else want to share any other questions?
You don't want to see my drawing, but even though I was artistic, I'm like, I'm not having a drawing. But I definitely felt my grandmother come through because she actually looked out for me. She was my caretaker when my mom was working and my parents didn't really take care of me. So she essentially was who raised me.
Awesome. Yeah, it's amazing what a 5-minute drawing activity, thanks Diana, can do for our bodies.
Yeah, it was cool. And I worked with Angelica. We did an inner child thing and actually bought what was it? Can't remember what flower it was, but she had a tree in her backyard, and I bought a flower to keep in my office to represent her.
Awesome. So great. Yeah, again, this took like 5 minutes. So play around with it. Like take some time today or tomorrow or this week and just feel into the different energies surrounding you and then putting it on paper and then feeling it in your body. It's really healing.
Oh, Alicia, I forgot to say, you asked that question. I felt like I was connected and not alone. And like all those things that you said about, like I said, waking up with black skin, alone, threatened, survival, oppression, like those types of things, like it just felt so soft, like there was a team, because like my story, I left my family, my religion, still not really, my choices aren't accepted within my family. So the fact that the family who has come before me was with me, that was just really comforting. So it was palpable.
Yeah. I mean, and you could do this with women, being a woman in the oppression, right? And like, what does a woman look like on paper? And who do you feel connected to that? And what happens to your body? What would oppression look like to you on the paper as a woman?
I'm actually really curious. Has this been done with men at all? Do you know?
Not that I know of. I actually, side note, a book I'm going to order that I found on Amazon yesterday was like something like 26 art activities for healing trauma or something. And I'm sure it can be, all of these can be used with men, like men towards women.
Yeah, because I know some of the things is like it's hard for them to get into their feminine, and like with artists, it might work. Because I've seen them try to dance, and that's awkward. So
Yeah, and I think as long as they know that no one's gonna look at their artwork and like it doesn't have to, like look at, like my photo that I showed you guys, like, hello. Exactly. It's like as long as they know there's no expectation of the outcome or how it looks, and no one even needs to see it. Could be pretty cool, actually.
maybe I'll test it out.
Yeah, I'll buy that book, and if I like it, I'll let you know.
Crystal drums are good for guys. Like if you have them together, they can hit it, make the sound and not feel like they're too like too dancey.
Yeah, I'm trying to bridge the woo, because some of them are really uncomfortable with the woo.
It's so important. When you said that, I had the biggest charge. So
that's good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if like Ty would draw like that. Maybe if he had already established trust with you and you guys were working one-on-one. Actually, Yana had him draw for an activity not too long ago as his integration task. So, and he did it. I didn't see it. And he's pretty private with that stuff. but he did it.
Are you talking about Crystal like one-on-one or like group?
It depends. I mean, I've witnessed in groups they've been in like so I'm actually spying on a men's tantra course right now. And so I get to watch them, but they don't know I'm there. And they've had them do dancing. So some ways they're doing like they're getting the masculine, some ways they're getting the feminine. But I can sense the awkwardness and the uncomfortableness. So I'm trying to like feel out what, like, depending on if I do more one-to-one or more group. Because one-to-ones, they'll just emotionally dump on me without meaning to get them into the feminine because I can hold the frame. It's just more of like getting them used to the idea of like being comfortable in the, and it's hard because I actually feel uncomfortable dancing like on camera. So I always go off camera if I'm gonna dance. So it's hard for me to even be in that level of embodiment because I'm all up here.
I'm
Well,
thinking of the haka. I have a Polynesian guy that I'm taking through the spiral, and the haka is like brilliant for moving me. But
I have a super mental blockage around anything Hawaiian or like Polynesian because growing up there, I feel like it's too not me. But it's beautiful. Like I know who is it? Alicia in that group. Her husband does that stuff.
I don't know.
It's oh god, it's the blonde chick. EJ.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, her husband's Polynesian.
Oh, I didn't know she was married.
Her name's, I think his name's Bear Love.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also like with my male client, and we took weeks building trust one-on-one. He came to me specifically to move some trauma. And we did some clearing, some pretty intense emotional clearing, and on our call. And the next day he called me and he's like, I'm in so much pain. My back is killing me. This sucks. Like, I don't know what you did yesterday. And so through a voice message, I said, okay, well, here's what you need to do is put on some music where you can just lay on the floor. And it doesn't have to be these like huge, gross dance movements. All I want you to do is subtly like stretch out your arm when you need to, like slowly. Like I essentially instructed him how to move kind of like a dance through molasses. Like if your arm wants to move, let it move and let that your body adjust. And if your neck wants to move, like I was like, trust any position, spend as much time as you need. Thanks, Steph. She's already gone. And I was like, do that and then like take a shower or eat something and then message me back. And I had this thought, I was like, he's not going to do this. I was like, this is wild. You know, like here's some girl telling him essentially to do some like yin based sexual movements on the floor, you know? And he texted me a couple hours later and he goes, I said, eat a healthy meal and shower. And he goes, the text was, I don't know if Costco pizza is considered a healthy meal, but that's what my body wanted when I finished. And he's like, and I feel so much better. So it's not always those like crazy large dance movements. I actually feel like that's better for women who have been oppressed and we have been told we can't move, is to then have these like wild movements and get to be the wild feminine. But sometimes for men, it's so much more healing to not make big grandiose movements. It's like just to sit and know that's okay. I don't know. And I've kind of witnessed that with Ty a little bit too. Like last night he was moving through something and I was like, can I just sit next to you? And I just sat next to him and pressed, like he was here and I was here, and I just gently pressed my leg against his leg. It's like that's all he needed for his system to do this. But if I was like, let me hold you and let's dance, he would have been like, men.
So good. I love it, Leisha.
I actually asked Ty, I was like, maybe you should work with Crystal. And he was like, he's like, I don't need sex help. I'm like, I know, but
That's not all I do.
I told him. Yeah.
I'll probably ask him to look over my program once I put together.
Oh, he would probably love that. He'd be more than happy to.
I know Dominic was like totally geeking out about Ty. He was like, "Oh my god, he's so cool." I'm like, "Oh god, you guys are gonna be best friends."
Dominique Corchero. Is that his name?
Dominique is Crystal's partner, her boyfriend.
Oh, really? Wait, Dominic as in like blonde, like men's, no, different one. Oh,
And
okay.
he's just a dude I manifested amongst the house. He kind of, I joke that he came with that. They were giving away good men with the house. So he was an almost client of mine a year and a half ago. And then we always kind of kept circling around each other. And he's a mortgage guy here. So I told him, I was like, I think I moved to Austin and I need you to make sure I get a mortgage. And, but yeah, he flew up to drive with me back down to Portland. So we had lunch with Leisha.
You had a quick
the guy, like 3 days into the relationship.
I love that, Crystal. Nothing like to test the relationship early to see if it's going to work.
Oh, shit. I mean, why not? And then the nice thing, he's like, because, you know, he's gone through 2 divorces and all these things and you know, cheated and all. And he's like, you don't have to ask anything else. I'm like, no, I've had a year and a half to process all your shit. I don't need to ask anything else. I'm still mad at you for bailing on your contract, but you know, it's good because at least then we wouldn't be dating.
Yeah. He needed to bail on his contract so you guys could date.
Exactly. Because I wouldn't have been able to date someone I fixed. So good stuff. I gotta run. I got pee, but I love you.
Love you guys. Paige, if you need anything in the next questions, whatever, just let me know.
Okay.
Okay. Hey, what's happening with Hawaii?
Oh, well, I didn't get very much feedback on